Hello and welcome to Original Soundchat, where video game music is a work of art. On each episode, it's our goal to help you learn about 2 soundtracks from the world of games, as well as the people, stories, and critical tracks behind them. My name is DeVader.
And I'm Peter Spezia. We're brought to you by Anonymous Dinosaur and Rhymes with Asia. It's time to appreciate great OSTs and the games that they come from without getting too bogged down in music theory. Up first this week for our 2 games is 2022's the Somnium Files, nirvanA Initiative, Kotaro Uchikoshi's sequel with subconscious infiltrations to solve a serial murder case, this time featuring 2 protagonists and their AI eyeball companions, along with their respective narrative flowcharts.
Following that is a remake of Atlus's original dungeon-crawling, map-drawing adventure, now with a story mode added to the mix and a fully redone soundtrack, 2013's Etrian Odyssey Untold, The Millennium Girl.
Those are some heinously long titles for a video game. They both also include the noun in those long titles. You got the Somnium Files, you have the Millennium Girl, but you also pointed out something interesting just before we started to record about these 2 protagonists.
So in the Somnium Files, if you've played it, you know that for some reason, Mizuki and Date in the original have like a really high-tech gun that nobody else seems to have, which is kind of weird, especially for the setting. But in Etrian Odyssey's case, you have 5 party members in the story mode, and we'll get into what I mean by that later. And it's a fantasy game. Got a guy with a spear, you got a knight, you got an alchemist, you got a healer. And then you have a girl with a gun. And I'm not talking like a flintlock Jack Sparrow pistol. I'm talking like a Glock.
Okay.
Like a modern handgun.
So, I think that's about it that we can thread these 2 games together. Should be an interesting time to talk about their soundtracks. But first, Joe, how are you doing? What are you playing?
I'm actually playing the game that I'm talking about today. I went back to it. Turns out that where I stopped when Zelda came out to put it on hold, it was right before a boss fight. So that boss fight kicked me to the ground at least 3 times before I finally beat it. Because I didn't remember how to play as my party. But I'm making pretty alright progress now. I'm in the 5th of 6 stratums into the labyrinth, and we'll talk more about that later when we get there.
Good to make progress. I'm sorry you didn't finish just before, a big game like The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom will do that. I am still playing Zelda. I am starting the 4th temple. I went and did the order that I did in Breath of the Wild, as I mentioned last week, which was Zora, Goron, Rito, and wrapping things up with Gerudo. So, it's an interesting order for sure. I probably would have done things differently looking back on it, but I feel like there's some good parallels there. It's interesting with each of the different powers that they all have. But yeah, like we talked about last time, got to change up the cutscene. It's so ridiculous. I don't know how that was an oversight.
Yeah, I genuinely do not understand who in the meeting was like, yeah, just make it the same cutscene 4 times. Just do it.
Almost the same dialogue too. Like,
pretty much. Just replace Goron for Rito or Rito for Gerudo, and you got your script.
Yeah. So, really enjoying it though. Probably like 45 hours in, and of course looking forward to playing more. Though I think I'm going to be one who pushes more toward the ending just to roll credits and get that going, as opposed to like, no, once I do that, I'm all done. Like, I got to do every shrine possible. The time has passed long enough. By the time I get there, it's going to be a month since the game's out. I'm like, I just got to roll credits at a certain point, And then I'll hopefully be playing Street Fighter 6 soon. That is nice enough to come in on a rental, so I'll at least give that a shot. Amazing that a Street Fighter game has a Metacritic over 90. Like, what?
I am hearing very good things about both its modern control scheme as well as overall very good things about its single player. So that's interesting. I don't know when I will end up buying it, but I'm sure I will at some point.
No composer news to talk about this week. Well, we almost made a section out of it, but if you want to go check out Square Enix's Twitter account, they posted a 3-part conversation between Yoko Shimomura and Toby Fox, and that looks super cute. So, I mean, go check that out if you'd like there. But not too much on the game news front this week and the composer news front. So let's talk about the first of our 2 games this week, and let's talk about the Somnium Files nirvanA initiative. We talked about the original the Somnium Files. You brought that game to the show almost a year ago to the day on episode 179.
I want to say for the release of this game.
It was. So, I mean, that episode was June 28th, and it was just a few days after the release of Somnium Files nirvanA Initiative, which released in Japan on June 23rd, 2022 for PlayStation 4, Xbox One, Nintendo Switch, and PC. North America would get the Somnium Files nirvanA Initiative the next day, and Europe wouldn't have to wait long, July 8th, 2022. The game is developed and published by Spike Chunsoft. The Somnium Files is a mystery visual novel game where the player takes control of a special agent of the police branch known as Abyss, or the Advanced Brain Investigation Squad, and they are investigating a serial killer case. Joining the player is an AI partner who lives in an artificial eye inserted into the protagonist's left eye socket. The AI companion has the ability to use X-ray and thermal vision, as well as powerful hacking and processing skills. The game is broken up into 2 types of gameplay, the first of which, straight up visual novel. You're looking around an environment from a fixed location, you're examining things, you're talking to people in the style of a point-and-click adventure, and you're reading a lot. There's a lot of text. Now, what you're doing can either be talking to one of the game's supporting cast members for information, or investigating a crime scene, after all, for a serial murder case. New to this game, though, are virtual reality sequences, where you can walk around recreated crime scenes and do some more investigations. Additionally, there are some action scenes that take place, which are enacted through QuickTime event sequences. So get those button presses just right. The other half of gameplay is Somnium, a puzzle sequence located within a suspect character's subconscious. In these, you take direct control of your AI companion in a third-person perspective, and you're given 6 minutes to find the methods of unlocking the mental locks that are inside this dreamscape in order to progress deeper and deeper into the dream. But time only moves when you move, and performing actions with items found around the environment will also subtract a specific number of seconds from the clock. These time penalties can also be lessened by the use of items called timies. We mentioned in the original the Somnium Files episode that these puzzles generally involve peculiar logic, because it is a dream world, after all. But fortunately for this sequel, the quirkiness of the solution was generally toned down when you compare to the previous game, so that's good. It's easier and better to operate through the Somniums than it is in the previous game. The game narratively, though, is important because it is a game from writer Kotaro Uchikoshi. He directed and wrote the first game. He is not the director in the sequel, but still the scenario writer. And like his Zero Escape series that we've talked about with 9 Hours, 9 Persons, 9 Doors and Virtue's Last Reward, his narratives feature multiple multiverse-like routes with branching paths that occur based on the decisions that the characters make. Now, the branches will happen exclusively within Somnium sequences, and a flowchart is available for players to jump to any previously explored part of the story. The flowchart must be filled out almost entirely in order to unlock the game's true ending, as information will be available on certain paths, which are then needed in order to break locks that are stopping progression in other paths. So what is the story of the Somnium Files nirvanA initiative? 3 months after the new Cyclops serial killings were solved by Kaname Date, that was the events of the first game, new Abyss recruit Kuroto Ryuki participates in a live quiz show until it is interrupted with the sudden appearance of the right half of the corpse of Jin Furue, beginning a string of grisly serial murders dubbed the half-body, or HB, serial killings. And these are committed by a masked figure calling themselves Terror. Not like fear, terror, like one who tears pieces of paper, terror. Working together with his AI partner, Tama, Ryuki follows the trail of Terror's killings, eventually learning of the existence of an ideological group called nirvanA that believes in simulation theory and forwards an agenda called the nirvanA Initiative, which Terror follows. As if that weren't strange enough, things get even weirder when 6 years later, the adoptive daughter of Kaname Date, Mizuki, who is now an Abyss agent herself with Date's former AI partner Aiba, she finds the left half of Jin Furue, who is in the same condition as the body was all those years ago. Halves of bodies stretched out across 6 years in the same condition. What is going on? Big questions. What is the identity of Terror? How are the halves of serial murder victims showing up 6 years apart? And what role does nirvanA play in the HB killings? Joe, here's where I'll ask you, what are our experiences with the Somnium Files nirvanA initiative?
I played it around launch. I want to say I played it before launch. I think I was lucky enough to be handed an early Steam code. I think I finished it very shortly before it actually released fully, which it's a good thing that they sort of made the puzzles less dream logic-y, because when you play a game before it's come out, there's no walkthrough to tell you what crap is going on in the game if you can't figure out a puzzle. Though I think there was like 2 puzzles or something where I had to go to the other person at NWR, the one who was actually like playing the Switch version and reviewing it. I had to go to him and be like, hey, do you know the solution to this puzzle? I can't figure it out. So that was fun. I think that was my first experience with playing a game like fully before it came out. And then I had another one at the end of the year last year too, so that's weird. But yeah, it was one of my favorite games of the year. And I think I overall like it better than the first game, even though I think we both talked about like the general twist moment of like, here's what's really going on, is really forced and stupid. And I don't like it nearly as much as the first game's twist. But I think other than that, I think this is overall a stronger mystery, a stronger game. Not to say that the original game is bad. I like it just fine as well. But also, I like Mizuki as a protagonist more than I like Date. And Ryuki, sure, he's there too, I guess. I have no strong feelings about Ryuki either way. Tama's fine, I guess. Not as good as Aiba, but Tama's fine, I guess.
Fine is a word. But yeah, I think that's a really good way of putting the experience with this game. It's a better overall game and experience, I think, than the original, where like the original was still trying a lot of new ideas and Uchikoshi trying to start something new. So I think nirvanA Initiative is a better overall experience, but you're right. The twist is not as good as the original. Not that the original is a masterclass, but it's just, yeah, they do shoehorn it in here. You're right. As far as the likability of the protagonist, Mizuki is great. Ryuki sure is a Johnny Young Bosch type protagonist, if that makes sense to those who follow game voice actors. JYB does not voice Kuroto Ryuki, but has the same kind of performance vibe, if you understand what we mean by that. But yeah, it's a good game and a soundtrack worth talking about because it's one where a lot of tracks come back from the original the Somnium Files, but there are also plenty more new tracks here in this game, and it's worth talking about. For me, I didn't play it at launch. It was when I got to play a couple months later. I played the Somnium Files as a result of you talking about it on original Soundchat. And so for those who listened around that time period, it's like, yeah, I decided to check it out because you did such a great job bringing it to the show. I enjoyed it. I gave the sequel that had just launched a rental and enjoyed that one as well. The first game, I think I did 100% achievements on Xbox, and I tried to do that for the second game, but there's this little mini game with Tamagotchi equivalent virtual pets, and basically you have to do too much grinding in order for one achievement, so it was not worth it. But yeah, did a lot of those achievements there.
I had already forgotten about the Tamagotchi thing. I think I opened it once and then never touched it again.
Yeah, exactly. It's not important. You don't need to do it. But it's one of those things where it's each step of the process is on a 20-minute real-world timer, and so you're just grinding out way too much time to get all of the variations of how the little Tamagotchi can evolve. It's ridiculous. Don't tie an achievement to that. Anyway, to talk about this game, I thought there'd be some development information, but for such a new game, there really isn't. And that's kind of surprising. I think this game does a couple neat things, though. The first of which is how it involves players who may or may not have played the original game. Early on, the game literally asks you if you know the events of the original Somnium Files. Like literally asking you the big spoiler question of the whodunit of the first game, and you gotta type the name. It's also something where it's like, what was that character's name? I gotta actually remember and make sure.
Yeah, it asks the culprit's name, which I did not remember because it had been over a year since I'd played the game. And it describes something that happened to a character, and this like, which character did that happen to? And I did not remember. I had to go look it up.
Yeah, I mean, fortunately for me, it was, it's literally been like a month since I finished it. So it's like, oh yeah, okay. But it's a neat thing where an alternate dialogue track and a character appearance is used if the I know what happened option is selected. And that's a neat thing. It's one of those games where, yeah, you probably should play the original. It will help. There's a lot of payoffs there, but if you want to go into the sequel fresh, you totally can. It's just you're going to miss some of those things, which I feel like is the case with most narrative-based games.
You're also not going to have enough context for how much of a loser Kaname Date is.
That's true. I thought it was interesting when I, played through the game and got the true ending. There's a little bit at the end where you follow a thread of information to its logical conclusion, and you're given a secret ending, basically, and it unlocks a bonus somnium, which recreates the first escape room from 999, 9 hours, 9 persons, 9 doors, where Aiba plays the role of Junpei, the protagonist of 999. Such a cool little callback, just grinning ear to ear as I thoroughly enjoy the Zero Escape series and really appreciated how faithful of a callback it was.
Are you referring to the thing where I forget they give you some information at the very end of the game that you can take to a that ending is also really cool, just in general.
Yep. Sure is.
This game in general does a very good job with like, oh, you need to use information you don't get until you're over here, over there. And that like it can unlock some weird stuff. I think there's like weird dialogue if you already know Terror's name in the first interrogation. Like it's really interesting. They did some really neat meta stuff with it. It's cool.
And this is where I kick you in the shins lightly and say, hey, if you like that, you need to play Zero Escape. Because like this was like, granted, the end was really cool, but the whole concept of using information over here in a different thread is like cranked up so much more there. So I'll just, that'll be my nudge for you there. Especially after, it's been a year since we've played these Uchikoshi games. nirvanA Initiative reviewed well with a Metacritic average of 88 on PC, 85 on Switch and PS4, and 84 on Xbox One. The game's characters, voice acting, premise, and combination of visual novel and puzzle sections were praised. There were some critiques that included obtuse point-and-click sequences, the rigid structure of now you do this and now you're doing this. Some thought it was an unsatisfying ending, and also some people didn't appreciate the quirky sense of humor in the writing. There's not much sales data out there. It might have done about the same or slightly better in Japan in its first week. But it's a game that certainly wasn't going to be up for many awards, and there weren't really any noted, especially no significant awards there. The legacy, almost a year later, of the Somnium Files nirvanA Initiative, I think in general it was kind of surprising that this sequel was made in such quick succession after the first game. It doesn't really set up like a third game in a trilogy, but, I'm sure one could be created if Spike Chunsoft really wants to make that a thing. So I think a new game a couple years from now is not an impossibility, but I also wouldn't hold my breath.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think that sounds about right.
The composer that we'll talk about this week, his name is Yasushi Asada. Yasushi Asada was born on June 23rd, 1979, in Niigata, Japan. He started playing the guitar when he was in elementary school and started producing music such as DTM and composing by the time he entered high school. While he was in college, he was very interested in making music on a PC and was self-taught. And after graduating from university, he studied composition and arrangement at a music school. After doing a lot of ringtone MIDI production work, he became involved in game music production, and he's also involved in a number of guitar playing jobs. So yeah, he's primarily a guitarist and has different performance credits for that, but also a composer as well. He's currently part of Noisy Croak, a music production company led by Hideki Sakamoto, who I looked up and I'm like, how haven't we covered Hideki Sakamoto yet? But okay, we haven't, but yeah, he's part of this Noisy Croak group. And Yasushi Asada used to have a blog and official website, but they're now dead links, and that doesn't help for delving into further research. On that Noisy Croak website, though, he has a profile, and when he's, gives a quote to the fans out there, he says, quote, "If you need a hot guitar, please leave it to us. We also support acoustic guitars." And you can follow him on Twitter at Yasushi Asada. Yasushi Asada's discography involves him composing for Super Monkey Ball Banana Blitz, Castlevania Judgment, Bakugan Battle Brawlers, Tokiden 2, Knights of Azure 2, Bride of the New Moon, Dragon Ball Z Kakarot, and, most recently, the Somnium Files nirvanA Initiative. He did some sound design or support work on Tales of the Abyss, Shining Force Exa, Yakuza 2 and 3, and recently Doraemon Story of Seasons Friends of the Great Kingdom. He is also a Super Smash Bros. Ultimate arranger, and honestly, responsible for arranging some of those tracks with hot guitars, including Brinstar Depths. That's the one that got featured with the violin on there. He arranged Battle Trainer, Pokemon Sun and Moon, Iceman Stage, and then a couple Castlevania tracks with Out of Time and the Chef's Kiss Divine Bloodlines. He arranged Gaia from Samurai Showdown, as well as Main Theme from Metal Slug, which both of those came in the Terry Bogard pack. When it comes to the soundtrack for the Somnium Files nirvanA Initiative, the music was primarily composed by Keisuke Ito, and we talked about him not during the Somnium Files episode. In fact, we covered him during episode 154 for his work on Bloodstained Ritual of the Night. There are some tracks, though, that are composed by Yasushi Asada, and the lyrics to the vocal songs were written by the writer Kotaro Uchikoshi. And yep, if you see how some of those lyrics translate out, that makes sense.
Yeah.
But there are a lot of themes, as I mentioned, that return from the original Somnium Files, but a whole new soundtrack for this game too. And let's get into the 5 critical tracks for nirvanA Initiative. And so for this sequel to the Somnium Files, we start out with critical track number 1, properly titled nirvanA Initiative. nirvanA Initiative, as it is stylized not with a capital N at the beginning, instead with a capital A at the end. Why, you may ask? So that the end of nirvanA and the start of initiative can make a capital AI or I. Oh, they're so clever. They're so clever. It's stylized this way in pretty much everywhere as far as referring to the game's title. And this track is the main menu theme. Also just the main theme for the game as a whole. It's going to come back in certain parts throughout the story, like that secret ending, when there's big crucial moments of revelation. It's an interesting track to pop up, especially during the visual novel part of gameplay. But yeah, this piano track that's very deliberate with these haunting vocals. A very effective piece overall. And this game, even though they're both serial murder mysteries, the whole thing with simulated reality and tearing at the seams, and that's why he's terror and Nizitlos, and there's a weird spookiness to it all. One of those things where if you think about it too much, you wonder, like, okay, now I know it seems crazy, but is it really that crazy? One of those strange things. So, you don't need that exciting of a main theme, but it definitely plays up the eeriness and the spookiness while keeping it supernatural.
I agree with all that, and I kind of prefer this one to the original game's main theme, honestly. Just because that vibe, I feel, is done a lot better. And again, the plot of the sequel is just generally more interesting, so it sort of feeding into that feeling of, okay, but maybe they got a point, maybe slightly, especially when you see some of the, extra endings. It's, I think it works really, really well for the general tone of this game.
I think we also have to talk about quickly just our shared moment of, wait, really? Did they really do that? Of how in the first game, this idea of the Nizet secret Illuminati-like group was the ramblings of one Iris Sagan, one of the main characters in the first game. And of course, she comes back in this game. But especially, coming so fresh off of the original game, we both had the shared moment, with each other texting of like, did they really pull that like Nizet as a real thing after it was such a big malarkey thing in the first game? It's an interesting narrative choice.
Yeah, I genuinely could not believe that they came back and in that way. That was weird.
One of the new things in the game comes with some pretty memorable music, and that would be number 2 on the Critical 5 tracks for the nirvanA initiative. This is Clue Investigation. This is the virtual reality theme. There aren't too many sequences, but there's a handful where either as Ryuki or Mizuki, because you have different branches and timelines that you had to play as those two protagonists, but they'll each take advantage of this virtual reality technology where their AI companion recreates the crime scene as it was, and you get to walk around it. It's a nice little step for the evolution of the Somnium Files gameplay. But yeah, this one is neat. It's just a track that really sticks out with you, especially that thumping, repetitive bass, all while the synths kind of represent the data around you, the visualized information that you as a character you almost can't believe you're walking through it, but let's just suspend that disbelief and check out a crime scene and recreate it.
Yeah. It feels like it should be mentioned. This is not what VR means, but it's fine. This is AR. It's literally AR.
Yep.
Those are two different things, but whatever. I really, really like this song just because it sounds techy. The synth, like you pointed out, just has this very, I don't know, it makes me think of a heavy simulation and like the processing of a computer over information and stuff like that. And also just the melody, the falling notes is really catchy, like weirdly catchy, and I'm mad about it. But yeah, I really like this song.
Just does a really good job recreating the scene and amplifying the mood. A song that comes out of nowhere, but clearly grabbed both of our ears, is critical track number 3 for the Somnium Files nirvanA initiative. This is Novel Ingress. This is the Somnium theme for Lien Twining. And Lien is the criminal with a heart of gold. He is a locksmith, lockpicker. Works as a locksmith, but really the big skill is he picks locks. And he has the big crush in the game on Kizuna Chieda. But as you explore his Somnium and float through the air trying to unlock bigger and bigger safes, this track pops up and is the main theme through it all. And Akira Yamaoka, is that you? It might as well be. All the tracks so far have been composed by Keisuke Ito, but you and I both texting back and forth like, that might as well be Laura's theme from Silent Hill 2, huh?
Oh, yeah. I really, really like this Somnium. It's probably my favorite Somnium in the game. This song is a big part of that. But I also just really like Leon. I think Leon is a really well done character. Because he kind of touches on some stuff. Well, first of all, he's weird because the keys of the stuff at the beginning. That's a little weird. I'll give him that.
Mm-hmm.
But overall, like he kind of touches on the idea of like he's a former criminal. He uses the skills he had as a criminal for like legit reasons now, or like legit things, and he's like really trying to turn his life around. He does not want to be a criminal, but he unfortunately sort of suffers from the whole thing that a lot of societies tend to fall into, which is, no, once you are a criminal, you are always a criminal. You will always be considered a criminal. And I think Leon's whole like arc with that is really, really well done. And I genuinely think that this song really drives home sort of the mood of Leon's whole arc, while also like this song, this is going to sound like the weirdest sentence I've ever said. This song looks like Leon.
Sure.
His design fits this like whole vibe so well. I don't know. Everything about that Somnium, I think, is just super well put together. And Leon came away as one of my favorite characters in the game.
Interesting. I thought he was okay. But yeah.
I mean, my favorite's still Mizuki, but
Sure. But yeah, everything about this is early 2000s. It's like if 2001 rock were a video game music song.
Oh yeah.
That's just what it is. We get a track composed by Yasushi Asada here, though, in critical track number 4 for our nirvanA initiative. And this is Homicide to Genocide. And now for something completely different. In the final showdown to save the world, you have a ridiculous James Bond-like action sequence. Okay, maybe the action choreography isn't the best.
Definitely shows that the budget this game had, which was not a lot.
Sure does. But you know what? The music comes through and delivers amplified stakes. Makes me think a lot of Final Fantasy VII. A lot. And so kudos to Yasushi Asada on that one. Not a lot of guitars here, which you'd think he'd be known for and all, but with this assignment, there's only a handful of tracks on the soundtrack where he is credited for composing, but this is definitely the biggest one. It has the big climax here in the narrative. And wow, it sounds different and sounds pretty epic, not gonna lie.
Yeah, I love the finale sequence of this game because it's stupid.
Oh, it's completely.
Absolutely dumb as hell, and that's up my alley. I think the original game sort of does a better overall finale sequence because it's a lot more focused on being tense and kind of, has an emotional part to it, and then this is just like, no, this is an action scene.
Yeah, basically you've already defeated the main antagonist, but yet the plans still live on and the threat is still there. Can you stop it? Mwahahaha. And yeah, that's the ridiculous stuff happens, but the music goes along with it super well. And we'll take another swerve to round out the critical 5 in, again, something completely different, but we would not be having an honest conversation about either Somnium Files nirvanA initiative if we did not talk about this track Have to Hole.
Oh, my Prince Charming, where can I find you? How do I remind you of a dream we share? But dreams are just for dreamers, lonely hearts and schemers. I've got to break the chains of fate on my own. Let's go, let's go, let's go. Lonely girls across the world, let's wake up and fight. Worlds apart with beating hearts, unite the light through the night. If the boys want to.
Vocals for this song are performed by Amanda Lee, who is the voice actress for the character Kizuna Chieda. Doesn't help that on the soundtrack, the track is literally credited as, oh, Kizuna Chieda did the vocals. Okay. All right, Uchikoshi. But this is the game's big vocal theme. Invincible Rainbow Arrow was the previous game's big theme, especially what do all the characters dance to in the musical number at the end of the game. So yeah, obviously we talked about that song in the previous game, and so clearly Have to Hole gotta be, this game's theme gotta be what we talk about here. Which is better? I feel like I do like Invincible Rainbow Arrow more, but honestly, the more I've been hearing the song as I've been working with it, I just wish there weren't a key change in the chorus. I feel like that kind of sets it back weirdly, because I really like the vibe that the verse is going with. But yeah, I wanted to also point out a couple other things about the song the more and more I listened to it. On the credits of the soundtrack, when this song returns at the very end of the game for another baffling group ending musical number for the series where all the characters...
I'm so glad they kept doing that. I'm so glad they brought that back.
I know, all the characters sing and dance and add their own, vocals and verses and lyrics. But yes, the vocals on the soundtrack for the grand finale are credited as Kizuna and her Heart Hole homies.
Hell yeah.
God bless.
Hell yeah.
What a credit. That's crazy. Also, as we talked about Katamari Forever last week, and one of your favorite game songs of all time, Everlasting Love Plus You, I'm listening to this like, oh God, it's the same key. It's almost the same beat and tempo.
Second dark on my way to the station. The crowd squeezes out my frustration, and now I'm taking heat in the classroom. Oh well, I'll eat some donuts in the bathroom. Now I hear my friend and herself a boyfriend. They're going out for barbecue on the weekend.
And it just sounds so good put together, doesn't it?
Like, bizarrely, it's, I don't know how to react to it. I do remember distinctly, speaking of, we've talked a lot about how we were texting while Peter was playing this game, because I had recently played it as well, obviously. And I remember after the first time you heard Have to Hole, I was like, I hope you really like that song, because the sound designers really liked that song.
Mm-hmm.
You hear this song performed, like 5 times? Not even including the big musical number at the end?
And it's like more as you get closer to the end of the game.
Yeah, it's kind of insane how many times they have Kizuna, perform this song over the course of the entire story. I personally, and I don't know if this is just maybe it's just because I heard it more, I kind of don't love Invincible Rainbow Arrow.
Okay.
Because I think the English lyrics are stupid.
But what about eating donuts in the bathroom?
Look, man, I'm a janitor. They do that. People do that. I don't understand it myself, but they do that. I kind of really like this song. I don't know if it's because the game said, no, you will like this song if it kills us. But I came away digging this song a lot. Rainbow Arrow, I think that song's fine in Japanese, but every time I hear the English lyrics, I kind of just want to sink into the earth and die.
The same thing sort of happened with me as when I went and listened to the Japanese version of Half to Whole. And it's like, oh, God, yeah. Clearly this song was written with Japanese in mind. And something happened in the translation where it's still fun. It's still catchy. But yeah, you can tell where the original intent was.
100%. 100%.
We got some tracks on the cutting room floor. Both of us do. Joe, you got a couple? Hit me with them.
One of my favorite songs in the game is a song from the last game, but redone because it was my favorite song in that game. My first track on the cutting room floor is New Investigation 1. Oh, this version of the song, gives me chills every time. I love this version so much. This is basically the first song you ever hear in a Somnium, and it is distinctly a take off of Monzai from the original game, which was the interrogation theme, and, again, my personal favorite song of the game. And it just has this slower version that is a lot more tense and kind of has a bit more of a creepy edge to it. It's distinctly because of who you are interviewing and the state that person is in.
Mm-hmm.
But when I heard this song, I've listened to this song probably more than any other song on this soundtrack just because, this track's really cool. I really like this song. I would agree with not putting it on the Critical 5 because it's just a rearrangement of a song from the last game. But I love this version of the song with all my heart. It's great.
It's a great track. It's early on the soundtrack and also in the game, and it sets the necessary vibe right away with telling you the stakes and the tension and the mood. And yeah, it does a great job while also paying direct homage to Keisuke Ito's previous work.
The other track on the cutting room floor, you want to talk about a song that was so clearly written for Japanese lyrics and translated into English. Let's talk about The Flower That Blooms in Snow.
There is hope within that shining light. The morning sun sees flowers bloom in snow. There is rain within those cheerful eyes, where it falls a gorgeous green.
This is the second prominent vocal theme in the game. It's not nearly as prominent as Half to Whole. I think you hear it, twice?
Something like that, yeah.
You don't hear it 7 times like you do with Half the Whole, but the vocals for this song are done by Faye Mata, though it's, again, credited as her character on the soundtrack being Amame Doi. I don't hate this song in English, but I think even more than Half to Whole, like I said, you could tell this song was written in Japanese and then translated to English after the fact. Which is a shame, because I think Faye Mata is actually doing a pretty alright job with the vocals and everything. It's a nice piece overall. Half to Whole is just a more memorable song, half because it's better, and half because you hear it until the end of time.
I agree. It's a good performance, but you do have the direction and the writing and all as, the framework you can work in, right? I think it's really interesting how Amame Doi is a character that's shown but barely mentioned in the first game and then becomes an important part, like an actual character by name that you get to talk with in the second game. And so it's a weird pull from that mermaid restaurant.
That is the only time you see her in the original game, isn't it? Oh,
yeah,
man.
Yeah.
I forgot just how small her part was in the original game.
So, it's a weird pull from that universe. Also, as a personal aside, I am old, And remember when Faye Mata went by Princess Aura in the Super Smash Bros. Brawl competitive scene in the late 2000s. Definitely remember Midwest regional tournaments where suddenly there's this Princess Aura who's like stopping by our apartment to play Smash with the people that I was living with. So that is one of those interesting points where seeing the trajectory of her career is something pretty awesome to see, and just, you know, what she's done with acting and performing. It's awesome. But it also just makes me feel really old. For my 2 tracks on the cutting room floor, one of these is an action song, and is, again, has connections to a previous track in Somnium Files. This first one is Face Off. Similar to Teki Tai from the first game of the Somnium Files, this is one of the tracks, but let's say it's the main track that you'll think of when it comes to the quick time event action sequences that take place. And like the commentary that we said for Teki Tai when we brought it to the show about a year ago, this might as well just be a song from the Yakuza franchise, or at the very least, inspired by it, but also you could just lift it up and put it straight in Ryuga Gotoku, in Yakuza, in Like a Dragon, whatever, and it'd be perfectly fine. It just fits super well, and it just has that mix of electric guitar, you know, kind of synth action going on, very high energy, and a good piece to include, but definitely cutting room floor at best.
Oh, this is one of my favorite songs of the game.
I mean, I agree with you. It fits the moment super well, but I wouldn't say it's one of the main songs in the game.
I would agree with that. Yeah, I would put it around the same level as New Investigation 1 in terms of that. Yeah, this song is awesome. The moments that it plays are usually really good, despite being QTE segments, which can be hit or miss, honestly. And it just reminds me, I forgot until I looked at the album art for this game, that when they asked Mizuki what weapon she wanted when she joined Abyss, she said, "I want a high-tech pipe."
Yes, right?
It's so... Because in the first game, when she fights, she uses a pipe, so why not?
The other track here on the cutting room floor, let's get to another Somnium theme. And this one is... That's a special one in the game. This is Nemesis Identified. This is the Somnium theme for Iris Sagan. Again, that character from the first game who played a very big role in that game, but less so in this one, but still an important presence. And Iris being an internet idol who goes by Aset or Tessa from her fans. She is a streamer and she has a big video game fan following. And so in the first game, there was this level that was a big homage to Minecraft.
I think you mean Shovel Forge.
Of course, yes. Shovel Forge. As Iris would go and stream Minecraft, I mean Shovel Forge, and have that be part of her subconscious dream world. Well, in this game, it's Pokemon Go, baby.
Boy, is it.
And it's amazing how the music represents this. It's like it could be from any of the first few generations of Pokemon, and you don't know exactly which generation it's supposed to be from. Keisuke Ito borrows the feel of a Pokemon theme in a video game perfectly, especially one that is set for mobile devices and has you going around to different stops and spinning it and see what pops out. Oh, is it Boss as a character to fight for you? Okay.
Boss was 100% on my party. I'm pretty sure she was the biggest, asset we had.
Totally. She's a big, big threat. Yeah, just amazing. There are also other tracks where, when you have to have battles, and they are, less Pokemon battle-y, but still JRPG battle tracks. It's the best Somnium in the game.
One of them, I'm pretty sure, is an 8-bit version of Face Off.
Yeah, probably.
Correctly.
Mm-hmm. So that's fitting, right? Just a fun one in this game. If I, went back to the Somnium Files and, could add some cutting room floor tracks or another track that appeared in this game, but we won't play it here, but the Kamakura theme, the Yakuza Lounge music was just so good. When I played that, I'm like, oh, that was one, if I was aware of it, and I would have put that on cutting room floor for the original Somnium Files. But a lot of great tracks here overall in the game. What will I never forget about the Somnium Files nirvanA initiative? It's just more of that Uchikoshi weirdness.
This game's weird as hell.
Whether it's lyrics in songs or the plot twists that he makes with the different narrative threads and the flow charts that you got to jump all around and pick this here. And I think it does resolve in a nice way with the secret ending. I agree that's a nice and not the the most unique thing ever, but I feel like it's fitting for maybe what the series might want to do in the future. And I am really glad that after holding off on playing the Somnium Files after thoroughly enjoying Zero Escape, I'm glad that I got to play both of those games last year, and especially this one.
I remember Mizuki being fun, and I love Mizuki. She's my favorite character in the series. In both games, she is the best character in the game, and I will not be taking questions. And getting to have her take a center stage spot in this game is nice, and I do enjoy seeing her interact with Aiba, and I like Aiba a lot as well. Date not being around as much kind of helps, though when he does, because he's used sparingly, when he does show up, he's pretty alright. I like it. But that should be how Date is used from now on in any other damn game they make. It should be, alright, Date will show up exactly 3 times in the entire game. He will say 5 lines each time, and then he will never talk again. And I'm fine with that.
Perfect.
But yeah, it's just, these games are weird. These games are super, super weird. But again, I think I like nirvanA Initiative overall better. I think it is a better put together, better flowing game in general.
I totally agree. And I had to bring this to the show eventually, and now's as good a time as any. To transition to our next game, we first like to talk about a fan cover, a fan remix that we found on the internet. And, there's not much out there for covers of songs from the Somnium Files nirvanA Initiative. But of course, I had to look up Half to Whole. Half to Whole is the big one, and feels like someone had to take a stab at covering the vocals, right? Well, someone named Mahado on YouTube decided to go the AI route for the Somnium Files. And so they said that this version of Half to Whole is, quote, sung by Drake and Jay-Z. It is certainly a thing. Mostly amusing when they sing lyrics like, if the boys want to reach us, they'll have to keep up. Without you, I'm only half. I need to be whole. So please enjoy this weird silliness, and we'll be right back.
I've got to break the chains of fate on my own. I had two houses of let's go, let's go, let's go. I had two houses of home. Lonely birds across the wood, let's wake up and fight. Worlds apart, we're being hearts unite. Lightning through the night. If the boys want to reach out.
All right, let's go from a very weird game to a game, honestly, that is not all that weird, and is also a complete 180 in terms of tone, sort of, and in terms of story in a lot of ways, as we will find out. Etrian Odyssey Untold, the Millennium Girl, released for the 3DS in Japan on June 27th, 2013. North America would get it on October 1st, 2013, and then Europe would get it on May 2nd, 2014. It was developed and published by Atlas in all regions except for Europe, where it was, weirdly enough, published by NIS America. Etrian Odyssey is a series of labyrinth-based first-person dungeon crawlers that began on the Nintendo DS, and in fact, Untold is specifically a remake/reimagining of the original Etrian Odyssey, which itself released for the Nintendo DS in 2007. We have technically, but not really, talked about two Etrian Odyssey games on this show. The Persona Q games, which we talked about on episodes 61 and 122, respectively, they're Etrian Odyssey games, with a Persona skin draped on top of them and some Persona-style mechanics thrown in, but for the most part, like, the Persona Q games are Etrian Odyssey games.
Yeah, and for me, I guess it maybe only clicked in now, or maybe some time ago, where like, Persona Q, what does that come from? And this game's title in Japanese is Shin Sekaiju no Meikyu, Millennium no Shoujo. So it's the MEIKYUU, but sometimes stylized as MEI letter Q. And so that's why with the Meikyu, Persona Q. So there it is.
That didn't occur to me at all. I saw that title multiple times while looking into this game, too. So, what is Etrian Odyssey? A majority of the game is spent exploring a vast labyrinth spanning multiple floors. Movement is grid-based. Each step is one tile in the direction that you hit the D-pad. So basically, it kind of works on tank controls, sorta. Left and right will turn you to the left and right, but you will not move forward. And then forward and backward will move you forward or backward in context of where you are facing, which might not be north. And as you are doing that, through a first-person perspective, of course, that happens on the top screen, and on the bottom screen, you have to draw a map of that labyrinth, because it does not give you one. It should be noted, in this game, they did add an auto map function. It's the first game that had it. That would come back in the Q games as well. But for me personally, drawing the map is really cathartic, and I really, it's very satisfying to me personally. But you need to do that if you want to keep track of where you have or haven't been, and you can also use it to label shortcuts, chest locations, material gathering points, so on and so forth. A party is made up of 5 characters that are positioned among 6 available position slots, 3 in the front and 3 in the back. Characters placed in the front will do more damage and be able to attack using a majority of their skills, but they will also take more damage themselves as a result. Characters in the back have more limited combat options and overall do less damage most of the time, but they are targeted less and take less damage to compensate. So positioning is important. You want your healer in the back, not the front. You want your melee people in the front, not the back, etc., etc. A majority of battles in Etrian Odyssey are random encounters, with the party being dragged into a fight as they walk around. However, there are bigger, more powerful enemies that can be seen on the overworld, known as FOEs, field on enemies, which them just being called that in this game made me laugh a lot because both Persona Qs bend over backwards to make titles for these enemies that can still be abbreviated as FOE.
Right, yeah.
When they could just call them field on enemies, but whatever. These enemies all have distinct movement patterns that the player must decipher if they want to avoid an encounter with them. And you want to avoid an encounter with them because they are far more powerful than all the other enemies on that floor. Honestly, when you first get into a stratum, if you run into one of that stratum's FOEs, you're probably dead. Like, you're probably getting party wiped if you don't run away, like, immediately. So it's very important that you sort of observe how they move, what pattern they use. Do they chase you when they see you? Do they move in a set, like, circle or something like that? You gotta pay attention to that, or you will die. So what is the main addition to Untold from the original Etrian Odyssey? Well, to put it weirdly, a story. There is a plot to follow in the original, sort of, kind of. It's very minimalist. From what I understand, Etrian Odyssey is essentially a game that contains no set characters or interactions between your party. You create a party of 5 people. It points to a labyrinth and says, go. That is the story of Etrian Odyssey. Which surprised me, actually, especially having only experienced the Persona Q games up till now, which obviously had very fleshed out stories. And that's essentially it. This is still an option in Untold, found in the game's classic mode. And in that, you can make a party of characters from 11 classes, though 2 of them are not available in classic mode normally. You have to bring them in from a story mode New Game Plus. So that is the Landsknecht. I looked up how to pronounce that, and everybody said it differently. They're a melee class, apparently.
Landsknecht.
The Protector, Alchemist, Medic, Survivalist, Troubadour, Hexer, Ronin, Dark Hunter, and then for the 2 that are exclusive to story mode, you have Highlander and Gunner. And Untold, as I said, introduces story mode as well, where you are given 5 preset members with distinct personalities and a more fleshed out story to follow, including an entire, albeit smaller, secondary labyrinth to explore called Gladsheim. So what is the story of Etrian Odyssey Untold? The town of Etria is a popular destination for explorers and adventurers due to its close proximity to the mysterious Yggdrasil Labyrinth, a relationship that has made Etria prosperous. The labyrinth, however, is known to be quite dangerous, with that level of danger only increasing the deeper you explore. The player takes the role of a warrior from the Highlander tribe, a warrior society with a dedication to promoting equal justice for all and a mastery of spears. He has been summoned to Etria by the ruling tribe, the Radha, to explore a series of ruins outside the town that they believe may be connected to frequent earthquakes the region has been experiencing. While exploring these ruins, the Highlander comes across a young girl who is asleep in some sort of high-tech pod, and his presence causes the pod to open and her to wake up. As she's finding her footing, a monster bursts into the room, chasing 3 more people. And to defeat this monster, all 5 members of this very hastily acquired party must now work together. Afterwards, introductions are made, and the 3 people being chased by the monster are revealed to be researchers from the faraway Midgard library. Simon, the leader of the team, is a medical expert and scholar in the medic class. Arthur, the youngest member of the team, is in the alchemist class and is adept at making elemental brews. Rakana is a protector with a talent for defending the rest of her team as best she can. And also, she really likes to drink. Then there's the mysterious pod girl. She reveals her name to be Frederica Irving, and the ruins they are in to be those of an ancient research facility known as Gladsheim. But she appears to have lost all other memories of her past. In battle, Frederica is the gunner class, so She's the one with the Glock. She's the one that pulls out a modern handgun. Where does she get the bullets? Good question. Next question. So in order to investigate the source of the earthquakes and solve the mystery of Frederica's lost memories, the team forms a guild with the Highlander at the helm and agrees to work together to explore Gladsheim. However, in order to get to the other parts of the crumbling facility, they will first have to explore deep into the Yggdrasil Labyrinth in order to discover geomagnetic fields that can be used as transporters into Gladsheim. So, the questions are, obviously, what is the origin of the mysterious girl known as Frederica Irving? Are the ruins of Gladsheim truly connected to the seismic activity being experienced in Etria? And what is the true nature of the Yggdrasil Labyrinth? And what lies at its deepest depths? And this is where I will ask, what are your experiences with, I guess we'll say, Etrian Odyssey in general?
Well, Yggdrasil, Midgard, and all sorts of Heims. Yeah, certainly not lacking in Norse mythology inspiration, that's for sure. My experience with Etrian Odyssey is through the Persona Q games. Granted, only the first Persona Q, even though I brought Q2 to the show. I have not played Q2. I know you did, but man, just those Persona soundtracks are also excellent. So I'm familiar with the general gist of the gameplay wrapped in that Persona framework, but have never found it compelling enough to go and seek out the originals, the sequels, the Etrian Odyssey franchise as a whole.
I have always kind of meant to try out Etrian Odyssey because I really like the map drawing. I know that turns a lot of people off from the series, and that's fair, but for me, it is the best part. I don't know how else to describe it other than it is satisfying to have that map completely drawn by the time you finish a floor. It just feels nice. Like I've mentioned a couple of times now, I'm playing Etrian Odyssey Untold right now. I have not finished it. I am over halfway through, I'm pretty sure. I'm in the 5th of 6 stratums, and I'm getting to what seems to be the climax of the game, but we will see. I love Frederica. I love Rakana. The Highlander is a silent protagonist, so like he's cool, but he doesn't talk outside of like dialogue options that you say. And then Simon and Arthur, sure, are also there. But it's been interesting. I am probably going to play Untold 2, which we'll talk more. They did a remake of 2 as well, which we'll talk a little bit more about in a bit. But honestly, the reason we're talking about it now is because Etrian Odyssey just got sort of a quote-unquote revival or experimental, can we actually still do these games when the DS doesn't exist? Because these are another one of those games where porting any of them forward or making any new ones is going to be a massive pain in the ass.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the dual screen and, gameplay on top, but, all the touch controls and map drawing on the bottom. Yeah, how do you replicate that on a different platform?
Yeah, it's so unbelievably designed for the DS and 3DS that putting it on anything else is just going to be an ordeal. From what I hear, the ones that just came out are fine. They're clunky, which I don't think they would have been able to find a way that's not clunky to do the map drawing. And they can't just leave the map drawing out, because then it's not Etrian Odyssey. Then it's just an RPG. But they believe they have found a way. The reviews say it takes some getting used to, but it works all right. I don't know. I have not tried any of the HD versions. I probably won't for a while. Right now on the NWR channel, I've been streaming Persona 3, and after that I'm doing Pikmin 2, but I think after that, I might do Etrian Odyssey 3. Maybe. So, I'll find out sometime in the next 400 years. Speaking of two things that these games have in common, not a lot of information on the development of Untold. I figured, all right, I'll go look into the development of the original Etrian Odyssey. Not a lot of information on the development of the original Etrian Odyssey. And if you just search like Etrian Odyssey interview now, it's all about the HD re-releases. All of them. And there's not a huge amount of information that was really relevant to this to put in there from those. So I did learn that the original game was almost titled Yggdrasil Labyrinth, but they changed the name in order to avoid its title being confused with the GBA game Yggdra Union or the DS game Deep Labyrinth, both of which had been published by Atlas in some regions just the year before in 2006. So, good job, guys. I think Etrian Odyssey's a better title anyways. It flows better. When it came out, Untold specifically, reviewed generally well. It has an 80 on Metacritic. The story overall was received kind of well, though some critics apparently felt its inclusion was unnecessary and slowed the experience down, to which I say, then just play Classic. It's right there. They gave you the option. One major complaint that I do kind of agree with is it's kind of like Pokemon in that you get one save file. That's it. Meaning that, let's say somebody wanted to play the story mode, but also wanted to have like a classic mode save over on the side. No. If you want to play classic mode, you either overwrite your story mode file or you finish story mode and start classic on New Game Plus. Those are your options. And that's stupid. But one weird criticism I saw, which half of it I can see and half of it I really can't, it received criticism for generally being overall easier than the original. Etrian Odyssey is apparently, and I didn't learn this until like last year, a series that is well known for being really difficult. Because it is heavily based on retro first-person dungeon crawlers, which are hard. And there were some critics that were not happy that the game was slightly easier. And at first I was like, well, I don't think they're like criticizing the existence of the easy difficulty level, which this game added. I think they were more criticizing like the quality of life features just generally made the game easier because they didn't rebalance the original Etrian Odyssey to work with those quality of life features. But no, a couple of them actually mentioned they didn't like that the easy mode existed, to which I say, shut up.
That's ridiculous, yeah.
Just don't play it then. Play the regular hard mode. It's right there. But that being said, a majority of the complaints was like, yeah, auto map, being able to adjust the difficulty as you go, which again, I don't think is actually that great of a critique. But also the ability to sprint, which I did not realize was a new addition in this game. If you hold B, you can go faster. I'm pretty sure this also ups the rate of encounters while you're doing it, though. I think. I might be mistaking the fact that I'm just moving over tiles faster to mean that, but that's definitely how it feels. But like, all of those are optional. It's not rocket science, just don't use them. So, in terms of where Etrian Odyssey would go from here, Etrian Odyssey 2, as I mentioned earlier, would also get the Untold treatment with Etrian Odyssey Untold 2, The Fafnir Night in 2014, which added roughly the same type of content as this one, being a story mode, cutscenes, a redone soundtrack, all that. Apparently, I found out that they had floated an idea for the story mode to bring back Frederica, now with 2 guns, but that did not actually happen, and that's a shame. I think that would have been awesome. I actually would have freaked out about that. That sounds rad. From there, a third-person spin-off, Etrian Mystery Dungeon, released in 2015, and then 2017 saw 2 releases, being Etrian Mystery Dungeon 2, which did not leave Japan, and Etrian Odyssey 5, Beyond the Myth. And then in 2018, they released Etrian Odyssey Nexus as sort of a greatest hits celebration title. It includes a bunch of classes from the past games, some dungeons from the past games, all that kind of stuff. That is the last new Etrian Odyssey game that has released in the series. Untold, unfortunately, is seeming like it's going to live on the 3DS forever, though, because the now released HD remasters of Etrian Odysseys 1 through 3 for the Switch and PC are entirely based on the DS releases. No Untold exclusive content in 1 or 2 whatsoever. Which kinda sucks. And that's like the one complaint or criticism I have seen about 1 and 2 in almost every review I have read, which is there's no reason why the Untold content should not be here. It doesn't make sense. Give me HD Frederica, you cowards. But also, maybe they'll bring it as DLC. I hope not. I don't think that's... I like the story mode of Etrian Odyssey Untold. I don't know if I would pay extra money on top of the already $80 3-game bundle.
Oh, what?
To play it. You can buy them separately, but if you buy them all together, they are $80.
What do they think they are, Square Enix?
Their justification was you get 3 games, one of them is 30 hours, and the other 2 are 50 hours each, which I kind of see, but $80 is still a steep damn price.
Heck.
And the main reason why I haven't bought any of them yet. So, the artists we're going to talk about today in terms of Etrian Odyssey, obviously the composer for the Etrian Odyssey series is Yuzo Koshiro, whom we have already talked about all the way back in episode 52 for his work on ActRaiser. Yuzo Koshiro is a legend. He's one of the most notable composers in the industry, on the Japanese side at the very least. And Etrian Odyssey is kind of what he is known for most nowadays. But since we've already talked about him, let's talk about one of the performers on the soundtrack, and that is one Aya Ito. She is a professional violinist from Japan. She has performed on several soundtracks for both games and anime. She's blood type O, and that's literally all I can find. Researching her was even harder than usual because there is also a Chicago-based singer-songwriter also named Aya Ito. Same spelling and everything. They are not the same person. And every search for Aya Ito brings her up first because she's just a more well-known name.
She just did better on the SEO.
I guess so. But why did I pick the violinist to cover for this episode instead of literally any other performer? Because I played violin, so I wanted to cover the violinist. That is my entire reasoning, and I make the rules. In terms of her discography, she has played on a lot of stuff. She is credited as a performer on the soundtracks of Final Fantasy Crystal Chronicles The Crystal Bearers, Gran Turismo 5, the Persona 4 Reincarnation album, Etrian Odyssey Untold, obviously, Sonic Lost World, Persona Q, World of Final Fantasy, Saga Scarlet Grace, Persona 5, Fire Emblem Echoes, Shadows of Valentia, Xenoblade Chronicles 2, Super Bomberman R, Final Fantasy 15, and both Octopath Traveler 1 and 2. So she's got some big names under her belt. And in terms of anime, she also has a bunch of big names under her belt because she is credited as a performer on the soundtracks for the magical lyrical girl Nanoha first movie, Nisei Monogatari, some of the Idolmaster series, Konosuba, Doraemon, The Ancient Mage's Bride, Legend of the Galactic Heroes, Dainu Tes, and most recently, the newest Makoto Shinkai film, Suzume.
Oh, that's neat. The German there.
Yeah, it's...
Die Neue Thesa.
Is that what it is?
Yeah.
They never say it in the show. And the show's also not great. It was a remake of the original Legend of the Galaxy Heroes. It's not as good. In terms of historical development research for Etrian Odyssey itself, Again, not only did Yuzo Koshiro do the original music, but also he's the one that rearranged and reorchestrated the music for this version as well. The original game's soundtrack is described as being, quote, FM-like, which apparently has something to do with frequency modulation. I read that and was like, okay, let's go to this wiki article and let's see if I can figure out like a quick summary of what this means from a tech level. And then my brain shut down trying to read the Wikipedia article, so I don't have that. But I have an example to play later on in the Critical 5. It sounds very Genesis-like. The one thing that I did get from that article is that for a long time, it was kind of the dominant type of sound used for both PCs and for video games. So I kind of gather from that Koshiro was specifically trying to emulate like old forms of game music on the DS. Like, again, it sounds like Genesis to me, which would check out.
Mm-hmm. Especially when he's cut his teeth on like Streets of Rage and all that.
Yeah. So, what does the music in Etrian Odyssey Untold sound like? Well, let's jump into the 5 critical tracks. The first one is Strife, First Strike. So there are actually 4 regular battle themes in Etrian Odyssey Untold. There is one for Stratums 1 through 3, which is this one. There is one for Stratums 4 and 5, and then both Gladsheim and the 6th Stratum have their own unique battle themes. Yuzo Koshiro has been tweeting about Etrian Odyssey music for the past week because of the HD re-releases. And one of the tweets happened to be about this song, albeit the original version of this song. He says, quote, "Small trivia, the bass sound used in the first battle theme for Etrian Odyssey 1 is the same as the one used in many songs from Ys 1 and 2. I originally created that sound when I was 18, transcribing the boss theme from Fantasy Zone by ear and producing a similar bass sound." So, it's got some origins in Ys, I guess, and some origins in his real early time making music. This song is rad. I think it might be my favorite of the regular battle themes, but the other two of the ones we'll hear later are still really good. But I think this one has just this really cool, heroic vibe to it. It sounds a lot more fantasy-ish than the others, I think, but it also, you don't hear in fantasy games very often? Shredding electric guitar.
Yeah.
And oh my god, they're killing it in this one.
It is a cool arrangement to have that come forward and be a solo instrument. I do like that a lot. But that aside, especially if you're going to hear it as often as you are in the first 3 Stratum of the game, I mean, that's obviously going to be a pretty critical track overall. And yeah, it just has that feeling of a JRPG battle track, but the arrangement is really nice and refreshing.
At the beginning of the song, if you go and listen to it, there's this like wailing guitar sound. You only hear that. If you hear that in game, you are about to be mad because you only hear that when you've been ambushed and all the enemies get to go first. So, yay! Critical track number 2 is a change in tone because it's when you go back to Etria for your rest. This is Cityscape, Roadside Trees Outside the Window. So when you're not exploring the labyrinth, you can go back to Etria, you can go to the weapon shop where you can sell all your materials and buy weapons and armor. You can go to the Rooster Inn, which is where you can stay and heal, even though the game gives you a guild house and it doesn't make sense that you don't sleep there, but whatever, what do I know? And you can also save at the Rooster Inn. There's a pub where you can go get side quests. You can go to your guild house and get, like, buffs from the maid that lives there. I assume there are other characters that could live there, but the story mode has a maid. She's cool. And this is the song that plays when you're there during the day. It should be noted, time is a thing in Etrian Odyssey Untold. I think it goes up an hour every 100 steps? Maybe less, maybe 50. But morning starts at 7 a.m. And then at 7 p.m. it turns into night, and at night encounters double. Essentially, your encounter rate doubles. And that's kind of the only thing that matters in terms of the time, but you can go to the Rooster Inn and sleep till the morning, etc., etc. I really like this song. It's very calming. It's very nice. It feels very like, oh man, been a hard day's work out in that labyrinth. It's time to kick your feet up in the pub and eat carrots. I don't know what they would eat in this world, but I guess it would be something like that. And I think it does that tone very, very well. And this is one of the tracks that I find myself whistling more than a lot of others, even when it's not playing.
Again, sounds like another crucial piece, especially when you're coming back from a long exploration. You know how I mixed up those two songs in the first half of the episode? I probably could do a similar thing with The Flower That Blooms in Snow, because again, same key, everything. You could make a killer mashup, I swear. And that's all I'm thinking when I hear this, like, oh, there's potential here.
Well, let's get into the second regular battle theme that you will hear once you enter the fourth stratum. Critical track number 3 is Strife, Kill or Be Killed. So as I said, you will start hearing this as the regular battle theme when you're in the 4th and 5th stratums. The battle themes kind of up in intensity every time they change, which fits the tone because the deeper you go into the labyrinth, the stronger and more hostile stuff is. So it kind of reflects that. I really, really like this track. I think I like First Strike just a little bit more. But I do think that this song still kicks ass. It's awesome. It was a very nice breath of fresh air when it started playing when I got to the 4th stratum, especially because the 4th stratum sucks. Yeah, it's another one of my favorite songs in the game. I think all the battle themes in this game are top tier, and this one is definitely up there.
I agree. Like these are right there. I might prefer this one a little bit more. It just has like the cooler intensity to it, but I can totally imagine like the wave of relief, the Kanto battle track after lots of Johto, if you will. That whole phenomenon that I don't even know if it's a phenomenon if you want to talk about that, but when we talk about how you hear a battle track over and over and over, and then when you hear a new one, it's a nice breath of fresh air. I would imagine that certainly applies here.
Following that, let's talk about one of the stratum songs, because every stratum has its own overworld music, obviously. And when I say stratum, every stratum is 5 floors, and then once you pass that 5th floor, the aesthetics change, the music changes, the enemies change, the FOEs change, etc., etc. And those are kind of how you... Instead of there being multiple labyrinths, like in Persona Q, It is one big labyrinth, but it's split into multiple parts with multiple aesthetics. Anyways, the track that I like the most for exploring the labyrinth is for the stratum that I am currently in, actually. This being Labyrinth 5, Lost Shinjuku. In the original game, apparently it is big, like, twist when you walk out into this stratum. The story mode in Untold kind of just makes it super obvious what's going on from minute one. But that is where I'll leave it for people who are curious. I will say that when you enter the 5th stratum, it is super different from any of the other 4. In a very, very, very distinct way. And also in kind of a sad, melancholy way, which I think this song really, really does well. Most of the songs for the stratums, at least before this, are more calm and like natural, especially the first stratum you'll walk in and it's just like, I mean, you're in a relatively peaceful forest where sometimes a rabbit will attack you. Like, whatever. And they sort of stay that way until you get here, which opens with this big swell, and then later on in the piece has another big swell to it, and has this sort of sad vibe to it. It's really good, I think. This is by far my favorite stratum song in the game. No contest.
Yeah, based on the title, I wasn't expecting this kind of music, but if there is the sorrow to it that the music is conveying, then yeah, that makes sense then why it sounds like this. Those swells are excellent. And I can only imagine for, dungeon exploration music that can be really effective. It's just a huge shift compared to the music that we're used to in Persona Q, where those have some weird quirks to it. But yeah, this has a heaviness and a somber nature to it, and I think that's really appreciated. I can only imagine. This is again where like context can only elevate it.
Especially in the story mode when you have a character that can react to the context.
Yes.
And for the final track on our Critical 5, this track is apparently not in the original game, and I don't know the implications of that yet. I guess I'll find out. But this is Final Battle, The Future of the World. I would not have heard this song had I not listened ahead on the soundtrack. I'm glad I did, because hot damn, this song is good. I still think like Killer Be Killed and First Strike are slightly better, but like just the sense of stakes and just the raw determination you could hear in this song just feels cool. And it's a lot harder rock than most of the other stuff we've heard, but I think that absolutely fits, and I cannot wait to hear this one in context.
Yeah, it's got to be super cool in the right context in the battle and all that. I like how the energy and spirit behind the electric guitar seems to be pushing back against like the darker undercurrent and like the darker tones of the chords and all that. This has good final boss music potential. I mean, you're going to hear other final bosses in other games where it's like big choirs and huge epic scales, but for what this seems to be, I feel like it hits the mood just right. And that's really cool.
But I think this is also a good place to mention. So Etrian Odyssey Untold does what every remaster that redoes the music should do, which is gives you an option to switch the soundtrack to the original game's soundtrack. But then what do you do with the songs that weren't in the original Etrian Odyssey? Gladsheim wasn't there. This song apparently wasn't there. Well, Yuzo Koshiro went back and made FM versions of those tracks. And I think the best example of kind of what I meant when I said very Genesis-like is the version of this song, the FM version specifically.
Yeah, that's a neat blend of like, you could imagine it, being played on a DS, but you're right, it totally is inspired by the Genesis sound chip or Mega Drive sound chip. But I mean, that is what Koshiro knows best, and it's really neat to hear him evolve the style over time and his music, but then also retrofit it in this neat way. That's really cool.
Yeah, it's super rad. I know there are a couple other games that do that. I can't think of one off the top of my head, but I know a couple other games that did remasters like this, also just like went back and redid it. It's really cool when they do that, because hearing more modern compositions retrofitted into the old way of doing things is always kind of neat, honestly. But I think this one is the one that pulls it off the best. For tracks on the cutting room floor, I almost did not include my first one because, I don't know, the Gladsheim music is fine, but like, Gladsheim's one of the biggest things added to this game, so I figured, you know what, this is good enough, I think I'll throw it on the cutting room floor at least. This is Labyrinth, Gladsheim, The Pulse of Time. So this is specifically the music for the final area of Gladsheim, which is actually the same song, but they added the said pulse being heavy drums. That beat is really the only thing that was added to the song, and it adds a lot, actually. So I think this is the better version between the two. But yeah, Gladsheim is this crumbling sort of technological facility that you, between every stratum, have to go and explore and do some story stuff. And it has its own battle music, it has its own boss theme, and it has its own overworld theme. And all three of them, I think, are fine. But I figured it was at least worth mentioning here.
I like the clock-like nature of like the ticking, the chin, 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 with the strings, and then the very repetitive rhythm only adds on to that. It's nice, and especially like the sprinkling of like the high piano notes in there. Again, just another interesting reflection of, yeah, if it's a track that was only going to be in this game, how is it going to be different from a track that you're remastering from the original DS game?
Mm-hmm. And let's talk about the third of the regular battle themes that you can hear in the actual Labyrinth, which I have not heard this one in-game yet, which is probably the main reason why it is here, but it's still good and worth mentioning. This is Strife Rapture. So this is the regular battle theme you hear when you are in the 6th stratum, which is the deepest point of the labyrinth. It just goes straight into feeling threatening and, like, overall sinister. There is no heroic feeling in this one at all. And it is generally, well, not at all, but, like, it's not as present as it is in the other two. And it is very clear that, like, no, you are in the most dangerous section of this place, and everything here can and will kill you. This is another one that Yuzo Koshiro kind of tweeted about, though more in a general sense. He says, quote, "Fun fact, for each Etrian Odyssey installment, I composed the battle theme for the deepest stratum, imagining 2 macho soldiers sprinting and engaging in combat against both enemy soldiers and alien forces, brandishing their assault weapons in a fortress. You know what I'm saying." I don't, but I get the idea.
I don't, but I do.
Yeah.
Also, shout out to Aya Ito. There in the clip, that solo violin coming in. I can only imagine that is her. And yeah, I'm impressed. That's some good stuff. I get why you put this one on the cutting room floor. I feel like it isn't as good. I mean, the organs are a neat touch, but it's just more chaotic, and I feel like not as driven by a melody as much as the other battle tracks are. Still really good, gives the tension that it's appropriately required, but I agree. I like the other two more.
Yeah, that's basically where I am too. So what will I never forget about this game? Well, I gotta finish it first. I really like Frederica, even though she is not like the most unique character. She's a character with amnesia, and she needs to get her memories back. She gets her memories back very quickly, I should mention. Like very quickly. And then you are essentially explained the plot and what the hell is going on. But, I mean, from the start, she's not the most unique character in the world. That being said, I think she has one of my favorite UI things that I've seen in games. I haven't seen a lot of games that do this, only a couple, and I think it's always neat when they do. In story, when she gets her memories back, she remembers that the nickname she went by was Ricky. And she only allowed, like, people who were the closest to her to call her Ricky. And at that point, she asks the party, like, would you guys mind calling me Ricky? And from that point on, all of the UI changes to list her name as Ricky. All of it.
Aw, that's cute.
Which is nice. It's a nice little detail, and I really, really dig it. So that's a lot of fun. I will also never forget all of the rooms where I'm too dumb to avoid the FOEs and just have to sort of tell myself, all right, well, we got to kill this thing. We don't have a choice. I hope we live. Because I always see the solution way too late. And by that point, I'm already cornered, and my choices are to leave the labyrinth or fight the FOE. So, woo! I like it. I am looking forward to playing Untold 2 at some point as well, but I think this was a very good introduction to the Etrian Odyssey series proper.
Yeah, I don't see myself playing it, but I'm glad that we're introduced to this music. Thank you for bringing it to the show. More Yuzo Koshiro is always a win. And yeah, that's a good inclusion. But with these two games and their ridiculously long titles, with the Somnium Files, nirvanA Initiative, and Etrian Odyssey Untold, the Millennium Girl. Also, these guns that I don't know what they're doing in these settings, but the protagonists have them, and they sure are nice and overpowered. That will do it for us this week on Original Soundchat. You can find me on Twitter at PeteSpeakeasy. Joe is over at StringPixel. The video version of the show is on the Rhymes with Asia YouTube channel. But it's an MP3 podcast version that you want, and that's hosted by Anonymous Dinosaur at anondino.squarespace.com. That's where Joe's other podcast, Smasher Pieces, is hosted. And you can find Smasher Pieces and Original Soundchat wherever you get your podcasts on catchers all around the globe, from Apple Podcasts to Google Podcasts, and even on Spotify, where we have a feed of podcast episodes, but we also have a video game music playlist. And if we talk about a track on the show and it's on Spotify, it gets added to this huge video game music playlist. Joe, what's being added this week?
Both of these soundtracks are on Spotify. All of Etrian Odyssey is on Spotify. Like, all of it. The whole series, which I found very surprising, but also enjoyable. I guess Sega owning it now probably helps.
Good job, Atlas. Good job, Sega. We like that. All right, go listen to Half to Whole many more times. And when you're done listening to all of that, you can find us on social media. You can find the show at Soundchat OST. Leave some feedback for us. How are we doing with these episodes? Tell us what songs we missed. And also give us some games to talk about in the future. Joe, who are we talking about next week?
I will be talking about Goteki.
And I will be talking about health. All right, Joe, let's play us out.
You know, we're supposed to talk about an artist, not like a concept. You get
Maybe that's the theme, that it's the artists are one-word titles, one-word artists. I don't know. We'll have to see.
It was kind of hard to find a remix to use here. Not only because is it hard to find one specifically marked as Untold, but a majority of the remixes that I found were of Etrian Odyssey 3 music, with some 4 and 5 sprinkled in there as well. So I guess at some point we should probably talk about Etrian Odyssey 3 in some form. Apparently it's a good soundtrack, I guess. But I did manage to find one that not only was marked as being from Etrian Odyssey, but specifically marked as being from the Millennium Girl. One. And luckily, it's pretty good. It is a cover of Final Battle, The Future of the World, though the artist calls it Decisive Battle, The End of the World. It is by the YouTube artist Iriku Atushi. That's Irikuatushi. And I think they do a pretty good job with this already really awesome song, so hope you enjoy that.
Thanks so much for listening this week on Original Soundchat. We'll see you next time. Take care.